Welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we are bringing you another NBA DFS Podcast. It's Friday, March 24th, 2017. I am still sick, a little under the weather, but it's not going to hold me down. Still going to do the pod. I'm here for you guys. It's what I do. It's how we do it. And, just like how the NBA players play through injuries, sometimes podcast hosts have to play through the pain, play through the sickness. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, we have a 10-game slate today. Awesome 10-game slate following up last night's awkward 5-game slate. I say it's awkward, however, it's finally a slate where I did well. I've been on a little bit of I've been struggling lately. You guys know the last few days I've had a little bit of a losing streak. I finally snapped and finally was in the green on last night's slate. And the weirdest slate to do it too. I just played all the guys that I thought would have massive usage in my cash games, and I won all my cash games. Even placed in a GPP with that cash game lineup. How about that, right? So I'll take it. It was a great night. I played DeRozan, I played Ulis, Booker, pretty much anybody that I felt was locked on to usage and or minutes. I threw in the lineup. And I didn't play too many Knicks, although I had a feeling that Rose and Melo would sit. Especially Rose. I figured he was hurt anyway. I had a feeling he would sit. Foot problems for a point guard is a big deal. So keep that in mind. But it was fun. We got it done. Interesting, something to take away from last night's slate, and we could be in a similar situation tonight, but we'll talk about it. The Brooklyn-Phoenix game was interesting. Now, I avoided the Brooklyn players. Obviously, there were some Brooklyn players you could have gone with, like Rondé Hollis Jefferson, Brolo. They had decent games. But I stayed away from Brooklyn because even though the line indicated a close game, I noticed the line get pushed. First of all, Brooklyn, that was only the fourth time all season Brooklyn's been favored. And granted, Brooklyn has been playing a lot better as of late. I don't know if you guys have realized that, but they have. They've actually been winning some games. And so when I looked at it, I felt Phoenix was more safe just because Brooklyn has a much deeper team. And when I read the line movement, it opened up at 3, ended up at 5.5. And I felt like majority of the public would probably take the points with Phoenix, considering Brooklyn shouldn't be favored by anybody, at least on paper. And it seemed to me like the smart money might have been on Brooklyn, seeing as how far the line moved. There must have been a lot of money coming in on Brooklyn, because that's how those things work. The public doesn't really push around lines. Only the professionals do. Money does. That's the bottom line. So I felt it was safer to take the Suns, even though I figured Brooklyn would probably run away with the game. And simply because even in a blowout, the Suns are going to have to play their guys. They have no choice. And when people are going to be on the court, they're going to run into peripherals. They're going to run into rebounds. They're going to run into steals. They're going to run into shots and assists and all these things because they're out there. You got Tyler Ulis playing over 40 minutes a game against a bad defense. Yeah, okay, their team might lose and they might get destroyed, but still, they're not deep enough. Like, they have no choice. They have to play their guys. And that was a situation that I found myself in last night. So I didn't play any Brooklyn guys in cash. I didn't feel like they were safe enough, although admittedly, I felt that some of them had upside. They weren't safe enough to me because they're so deep. And the Suns, even though I figured they were going to get blown out, it was the opposite. You can kind of trust that they were going to get those minutes. So anyway, that was just worth mentioning. Real quick before we get started with the injuries and the breakdown, this is the last pod of the week, so we won't be back until Monday. The FanDuel Live Final in Miami is this Sunday, and that is when Fuego Steve will be out there. So we want to take this opportunity for one more time to wish Fuego Steve the best of luck in the FanDuel Final, FanDuel NBA Live Final in Miami. Fuego, best of luck. For those of you that want to follow how Fuego does in a live final, he will be posting on his Twitter a link where you can kind of follow the event, follow how he's doing in his lineups. You can follow him at Fuego_Steve. And, of course, on the WiseTake Twitter and my own as well, we'll retweet it. This way you have other ways to get there. But definitely, if you're a fan of the podcast, please reach out to Fuego. I'm sure you've heard some of his podcasts. He's been coming on every Thursday slate. And wish him some luck. Show him some love. And show him that you appreciate the time he come on the pod. So definitely, Fuego, we're rooting for you, man. We wish you all the best. Okay, now it's time to dive into this massive 10-game slate. Starting with injuries, Danilo Gallinari is questionable with a knee at Indiana. Glenn Robinson's questionable versus Denver. Michael Benajay is questionable at Orlando. Jeff Green is questionable with a back versus Detroit. Sean Kilpatrick is questionable with a hamstring at Washington. Joe Harris is questionable, I believe, with a concussion or shoulder at Washington. Johnny O'Brien is a game-time decision with an ankle versus Cleveland. Miles Plumlee is out. Ramon Sessions is out versus Cleveland. Derrick Jones Jr. is questionable with a wrist at Boston. Ronnie Price is questionable with a leg at Boston. T.J. Warren questionable with a foot at Boston. Cristiano Feliciano is questionable with a back versus Philly. Wade is out with an elbow versus Philly. Paul Millsap and Ken Bazemore are both out at Milwaukee. Malachi Richardson is questionable with a hamstring at Golden State. Andre Iguodala questionable with a hip versus Sacramento. And Brandon Ingram is questionable with a knee against Minnesota. So as you can see, it's a 10-game slate. At this time in the year, you kind of expect a massive list of injuries, which we have. And, of course, you can certainly expect there to be some information breaking out tomorrow. We always say it. Late news is the best news. Once again, I know you heard me say it a million times. I'm going to say it again. NBA DFS is all about how you react to news. So everybody has time during the day to do their research and whatnot, and you know what matchups look good. But in order to get ahead of the field, remember, basketball, NBA particularly, NBA DFS has the least amount of variance when we compare it to NFL and MLB. The NBA is probably the most true to the numbers. So what differentiates you, what can differentiate you, is reacting to news, reacting to opportunity. One talent in its own is finding the information. The information's out there. There's no private insider information. The information is out. You may not get it before lock, but chances are most people didn't either. Either they took an educated guess or they took a chance or whatever the case is. But for those news or the value or the news that open up like 10 minutes or 5 minutes before lock, those are the most valuable because a lot of people don't have time to sit there and watch or tweak. A lot of people just look at it and, hey, what am I going to do? I still like my lineup. And how you interpret this news and how you react to it is going to determine how well you do that night. 9 times out of 10, I promise. You have to be able to react. NBA DFS is all about reacting. There's no regulation for lineups, so these lineup news happens randomly and it happens right at the end sometimes, and you have to react to it. And it's not always the backup. For instance, tonight T.J. Warren was out. They were starting Derrick Jones. Derrick Jones ended up getting hurt, and plus he's not a high usage player. So who got the upside? Marquise Chris. Initially, when I looked at Chris, I didn't like his price. I thought he was too expensive. Once they ruled out T.J. Warren, then you knew he was going to get more minutes. They were going to need him to play. He's a higher usage player than Derrick Jones. They're not going to rely on Derrick Jones to pick up all the slack of a guy like T.J. Warren. T.J. Warren's a significant part of their offense nowadays with Bledsoe out. So, it's not always that guy. Sometimes it's somebody else. And in this case, I think Marquise Chris was a huge benefactor of it, So keep that in mind. And remember, you got to react. Pay attention to your news before lock. Be on the computer. Be ready. React. And don't pass up on value, even if it's going to be chalky. If you see a minimum K guy who's going to get starters minutes, just throw him in there. At least in cash, throw him in there. Excuse me. And yes, I am still under the weather. Hopefully by the time I see you guys Monday, I'll be over it. But right now, I'm fighting through it. I'm doing it for you guys. Anyway, starting off with point guard as we always do. James Harden, 12-2 in a matchup against New Orleans. He's at home. Listen, we've seen this guy crush. Just a couple days ago, we saw him put up over 80 DraftKings points against his team. I will admit New Orleans' defense has been a lot better since the acquisition of Boogie. However, Harden seems to be pretty matchup proof when it comes to that team. We've seen him just absolutely slice him up. So he's certainly in play at 12-2. You can play him at shooting guard or point guard on DraftKings. Not going to tell you to fade the guy, certainly not. It's a big slate, a lot of options, but he's certainly the highest price stud for a reason. The Greek Freak Giannis, 9,700. He won a lot of people some money in the last contest. A lot of people overlooked him. They didn't want to play him against Sacramento, worried about the blowout, whatever the case was. He just got overlooked. And honestly, it makes sense. He just hasn't been showing that upside recently. And as Giannis has been doing lately, he kind of just craps the bed and duds, and all of a sudden randomly crushes. We saw him do that against the Knicks. He had a couple mediocre games, had a decent game against Philly, but never really showing that major upside. And then all of a sudden, his price dropped under 10K, and he put up 71 DraftKings points. And now we see he put up a bunch of duds recently. Everybody was off of him, and then, he drops down to 9,200 on DraftKings against Sacramento, and he puts up 65.25 on a night where a lot of the other studs, like even Westbrook, you can consider that a dud, even though he had a good game and it wasn't his fault. There was a blowout. He got pulled, ended up only scoring 58. So Giannis was, almost $4,000 cheaper. Actually, I think he was $4,000 cheaper than Westbrook, and he outscored him. So I typically like Giannis when nobody else wants him, and now that he just put up 65.25 DraftKings points, I think he kind of hit everybody's radar again, and Atlanta's actually been a decent defensive team. Plus, you have Howard down low protecting the rim, so I think I'm off Giannis this time. But I will admit that, it was a mistake not playing him against Sacramento. John Wall is 9,600 against Brooklyn. Phenomenal matchup. He's at home. I'm a little concerned about the blowout potential. Yeah, I know Brooklyn has been playing better, but Washington has been playing really well lately, and and it's a matchup with Brooklyn, so he could certainly crush. The problem is everybody on his team could crush, so it's hard to single out which one is actually going to. But at 9,600, Wall is certainly in play. We know what his upside is. Isaiah Thomas, 8,200. He's in a great spot. It's just, Philly's going to get, Phoenix is going to get blown out in this situation. I don't see a scenario where Phoenix hangs in there. Aside from the fact that Phoenix is a bad team, they got to be tired. They're extremely thin, and they got to be exhausted. So I think you can look to Phoenix more so as a reliable place because their guys are going to have to play. They have no choice. But IT2, while in tournaments, I get it. I wouldn't trust him in cash just because I don't know how much he's actually going to get to play, and I don't know how much they're actually going to need him considering how bad Phoenix is defensively. Similar to Brooklyn and Washington, Boston should be able to score from pretty much every angle, so it's tough to single out which player you really want. Kyrie Irving, 8,100 against Charlotte. Kyrie's been he's been playing well. He's been one of the only Cavs that have really been playing well. Him and Love has been playing okay since he came back, but LeBron has certainly been dudding. Now, in 2 games against Charlotte this season, he's only averaging 27 DraftKings points, which isn't so impressive. But his price is cheap and he's been playing well, so he's interesting. I do like Kemba Walker at 77. Now, he might be a little chalky because of his price. He might be a guy with big upside that you could play with a Harden, let's say, if you were to play Harden at shooting guard. So he could be chalky, but he's 7,700. He's at home. He's in 3 games against Charlotte. He's averaging 39.7 DraftKings points. I definitely like the upside that Kemba brings at 77. This is a situation where Kemba's a guy that I usually wait to buy low on, and this is a great situation. Just recently, until he hit this little mini slump, he was putting up, consistently breaking 40 DraftKings points. So if he can do that for you at 7,700 in a very good matchup against Kyrie Irving, I'll take it. And we all know Kyrie Irving is the guy you want to attack when it comes to, you can attack LeBron too, but Kyrie's really the guy you want to attack when targeting guys against Cleveland. Jeff Teague, 7,300. Phenomenal matchup. He seems like he's finally starting to catch his stride. 40.25 DraftKings points against Utah, 39 against Boston. It seems like he's starting to play like the Jeff Teague that we saw earlier in the season. And 7,300 is still not a bad price. It's probably close to where he belongs. And it's a matchup against Denver, a team that's terrible against point guards. So I definitely think Teague's in play. And, now that I think about it, we got a lot of point guards in good spots. So maybe the ownership won't be too bad on anybody just because there are so many different ways you can go. Tyler Ulis, 7,100. I'm concerned. This kid has got to be tired. It's the back end of a back-to-back. Obviously, we're going to have to pay attention to see if Ronnie Price is able to play. Keep in mind, Barbosa actually played a decent amount of minutes last night, but we'll get to that later. So for Ulis, 7,100, we know he's going to get the minutes, especially if Price is out. It's a nice matchup against IT2. However, if the game gets out of hand, they're going to pull IT2. And listen, let's be real. Ulis is not shooting the ball well. I don't know if he's tired or if he's just not a very good shooter. But he's been getting most of his points off of, DraftKings points off of assists, rebounds, steals, things like that. So he's in play at 7,100. They're about the same height, I think. They're both short. So I don't think he has quite the advantage over IT2 as some of the other bigger point guards do. But still, a guy that's going to get 40-something minutes, you still have to consider. You got to wonder what he has left in the tank at 7,100, but you still have to consider him, I think. Elfrid Payton at 7,100. I think we've kind of seen him. He's kind of came back down to earth recently, but he's still playing well. 7,100, the price is right. I'm not afraid of any of his matchups with either Ish Smith nor Reggie Jackson. And we know he's been really doing a great job of running this offense. And the thing I like about him the most is he's not scoring dependent, right? Like he's not going to go out there and score you a ridiculous amount of actual points. He'll probably get you double digits, but he's not going to go out there and you don't need him to put up 40 DraftKings points for him to have a good night. You just need him to get his peripherals. He gets a lot of rebounds for a point guard. He gets a lot of assists. So that's really all you need. So if he's going to keep doing that for you against Detroit, he's certainly in play. 7,100, I don't mind for a guy that has a 50 to 70 point ceiling, right? Dennis Schroeder against Milwaukee, 68. I'm not crazy about the matchup, to be honest, just because Schroeder seemed to be a little funky without Millsap. I think he kind of needs Millsap to help him run that offense and take some attention off him. So he hasn't looked all that great without Millsap in the lineup. And I don't like targeting point guards against Milwaukee too much anyway. Drew Holiday is interesting. He's 6,500. I played him last time they played Houston because we found out, I want to say DeMarcus Cousins wasn't playing, and I thought that he would get massive usage. He only played 28 minutes, and he got 37.25 DraftKings points. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't the 50-point ceiling that I thought he would show us. I don't mind him against Houston again. It's a pace-up spot, and he's 6,500. He's even cheaper than the last time they played him, so I definitely think he's in play. Problem is, in 3 games against Houston, he's averaged 25.7 DraftKings points, and I'd expect Boogie to be back, and we know his usage has seen a huge dip with Boogie and Anthony Davis both on the court. Rajon Rondo, 6,200. Very interesting against Philly. Chicago needs the game. They're still they're still outside the playoffs hunt, and they're looking for it, so they want to win. We've seen they've been trying to win, and typically when they win, Rondo has a good game. So they got a matchup with Philly. They want this game. Rondo's 6,200. It's not bad considering his upside. We just watched him put 50.25 DraftKings points up against Toronto. He kind of dudded against Detroit, but we can see that was on the back end of a back-to-back after he played 40 minutes against Toronto in an overtime game. So I can attribute that to him being a little tired. I can understand that. But I expect him to bounce back against Philly in a game that Chicago really, really needs for sure. Jeremy Lin, 5,600. I don't think I want him against Wall. Wall's a big physical guy, and I think Jeremy Lin, I don't know how much he played tonight. I know he didn't have a minutes restriction, but I know he didn't do all that well. Just not crazy about it. There's so many other point guards you can go with. Jameer Nelson, 5,400. Certainly an option against Indiana. Not somebody I'm dying to play just because while he can show some upside from time to time, his floor isn't really there. 2 games in a row putting up 20 DraftKings points. Not exactly something that you're looking for. T.J. McConnell against Rondo is certainly in play. You love targeting point guards against Chicago. Now, I know McConnell's minutes have kind of been up and down, but I think this is a matchup he could excel in against Rondo. So I definitely think he's interesting at 52. I'd certainly rather play him over Jameer Nelson, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, you got some interesting plays. Ish Smith and Reggie Jackson, depending on who starts, could make for very intriguing plays. Ish Smith was 4,200 against Chicago. He only played 25 minutes, but he did start. Put up 26.25. It was okay for cash, not exactly what you were looking for GPPs. But let's see if he starts again. Reggie Jackson is only $49, only $100 more. But not only have we seen his minutes dip, but his performance has really been bad. He's got no confidence right now. So I think if I'm going to go anywhere in this game, it's Ish, and I would hope that he started. Let's see who else we got here going down the list. I think for point guard, that's pretty much... Oh, Barbosa. I want to talk about Barbosa. 3,200. He played a lot of minutes today. I'm not exactly sure. I think it was in the 30s. So if Derrick Jones is out, if T.J. Warren's out again, they're gonna need this guy to step in and play some more minutes. So I think he's a viable option. He's 3,200. He's extremely cheap. So with some value, we're looking at if he's cleared to play. I think he could be very interesting as far as value. And, he's 3,200. He's almost the minimum. So he has to be considered. I would only really consider him, though, if we found out that a couple of these Phoenix guys are still going to be out. I think Derrick Jones got hurt in this game because he played and all of a sudden he's on an injury report is questionable with the wrist, and he didn't play very many minutes. He didn't play at all in the fourth. So he could potentially be out. So Barbosa may get pushed into the lineup. He might be playing a position he's not comfortable with, but they might need him to play. So I definitely think you have to consider Leandro Barbosa. Moving on to shooting guard, we talked about Harden. Jimmy Butler against Philly. We know that Butler has the upside. He's been playing well. 4 straight games over 45 DraftKings points, including a 67, although that was an overtime game against Toronto. We know his usage is up, but his price is up, 9,200. You're not getting those deals anymore. So he's considerable, but I don't think on this big of a slate he's a must play. Bradley Beal, 78, coming off a great game. Same thing with Brooklyn. You don't know how long they're going to stay in contention, and also you can target Brooklyn in so many different ways. It's hard to figure out which one is going to have the big game. Devin Booker against Boston is going to need some tougher defense in this matchup. I'm not sure about his ankle. We know his minutes are pretty secure. He's going to play somewhere in the mid-30s. But there's a lot of different options, so I think there's other people you can consider. I'd rather play Nick Batum over Booker. Nick Batum is also small forward eligible. He's $6,900, the same price. And while Booker may be more suited for cash because you know his minutes are there, I think Batum in the situation is he's obviously more rested, and he's got a good matchup against Cleveland in a game that he should step up. Should see some LeBron defense, which I'm not afraid of. So I like Batum a lot. Avery Bradley's in a great spot against Phoenix. The same thing goes, though. You're concerned about how many minutes he'll get if the game gets out of hand, and you're wondering which one of these Boston guys is going to have the big game, because one or two of them is going to go off. It's just which one. They're all in good positions. Gary Harris has been solid, but I don't like targeting shooting guards against Indiana. They've actually been pretty good against shooting guards recently, and while Gary Harris has been consistent at 6,500, I just don't think you have to go there. Will Barton has been okay. I mean, his price went down significantly because Wilson Chandler's back, but he still put up 33.5 DraftKings points. So people might see his price dip and assume you can play him. But with Wilson Chandler back, I certainly think that we're limiting Barton's upside, right? Like you really, and Gallinari might even be back, so that would really limit his upside. So I'm not too big on Barton unless we find out Gallo and Chandler were out, and I don't see why Chandler would be out because he's already playing. Tim Hardaway Jr., he's been playing a lot of minutes. He's been starting. I don't mind him at all. He's got the upside. Put up 43.5 DraftKings points against Washington in a close game. Certainly don't mind him at all. Evan Fournier, I think him and KCP are gonna guard each other. I'm not positive on that. In 2 games against Detroit, he's averaging 14.6 DraftKings points, and his usage really has not been there. So I'm not big on Fournier. And same thing with KCP. In two games against Orlando, he's averaging 19.9 DraftKings points. So I guess in GPP darts if you want to consider him, but I personally don't think I'm going to go there. Lou Williams, if you think this game is going to get out of hand for any reason, then anytime I think Houston's going to blow a team out, I want to play Lou Williams because he typically gets blowout runs and he'll just keep chucking. So he's somebody that I typically like to play in blowouts. However, I'm not so sure this one will be a blowout, especially not if Boogie keeps playing the way he played in his last game. But still, just someone to consider if that's what you think. One guy I really like today for tournaments especially is Bogdanovic. He's playing his old team. We got some revenge against Brooklyn. We know he's a good shooter, and he's a backup. He's a guy that could get run. Now, against Atlanta, he didn't get too much run. I think that was more of a matchup issue. This is a situation where he could definitely get some run. He's got some extra motor playing against his old team, his old buddies, and his old coach and everything like that. So I definitely like Bojan. And like I said, even in a blowout, I think he would still see some decent minutes. So I certainly like him a lot. Let me see. Washington hasn't been involved in too many blowouts recently, so I don't have too much of a reference. But either way, he typically gets in the 20s anyway as far as minutes go. He's 4,800, which seems a little bit expensive for him. But it's a revenge spot. He's got a little bit of added narrative there. So I do like Bogdanovic at 4,800. Probably more so in GPP just because he does come off the bench. Thabo you can consider. Denzel Valentine, you're going to have to look and see what the injury report looks like for Chicago. Now, obviously, Robin Lopez should be back. But we still can look at guys like Zipster, Denzel Valentine. These are guys that, Chicago is a little thin right now, so they're going to have to play these guys a little bit. They're all certainly in play. Nick Stauskas has been playing pretty well. He's somebody I've been playing in cash. Now his price is up to 42, but he's been playing relative minutes, and he's been in 4 straight games. He's over 20 DraftKings points, so he's somebody worth considering. There's other guys, but we're gonna move on. Go on to small forward. LeBron James 10-5. His price has come down because he hasn't looked so great, right? Well, I shouldn't say that. We saw him 60 DraftKings points against Utah, 54 against the Lakers, but against Denver, 31 DraftKings points. He really killed me the other day. I think that's why I just said that. He really killed me, hurt my feelings. But him and Jokic both. But he's 10-5. He's seen a little price decrease. He's on the road still. They're going to rely on him, so I think LeBron is certainly interesting. And if a lot of people played him the other day, then they're probably not going to be on him. So LeBron certainly has to be considered, even though Love is back and his usage might take a little bit of a dip. You still got to consider LeBron. Paul George, 8,900. That's just way too expensive. I know I said that about Boston, and he went off, and I'll eat that. And if I lose because I'm not playing Paul George, so be it. But 8,900 for Paul George for me is too much. Even in a good matchup against Denver, I just don't think I could pay that price. T.J. Warren, if T.J. Warren plays, I love Warren. Just he had a day off. You got to wonder about his foot. Lower body injuries are very dangerous, especially for scoring guys. So I'm a little concerned about that. But at 7K, he's interesting just because if he plays, he's going to get the minutes. Robert Covington, 7K. He had a rough game against Oklahoma City, but before that, he was playing really well. He might have a tough matchup on his hands with Jimmy Butler. However, small forwards against Chicago recently have actually not done all that bad. In 2 games against Chicago this season, he's averaging 31.9 DraftKings points, so I think he's definitely a viable option and a guy that we typically know is going to play a decent amount of minutes. Wilson Chandler, 6,500, certainly in play. I played him in his return game against Cleveland, and he did okay, 30.25 DraftKings points. He only cost 6,300, so that was okay. I was fine with that. He played 41 minutes. So if Gallo plays, I don't know if I'm going to be interested in Chandler, but if Gallo is out for any reason again, then I think Chandler's kind of locked into those minutes again, so I think it'll be interesting then. I certainly think he's okay. Chris Middleton, 6,300. You got to worry about some Thabo defense here. Either he's going to cover Giannis or he's going to cover Thabo. So, he's going to cover Middleton. Those are the two main scoring threats. Certainly a GPP option, but obviously he's not really a big peripherals guy. He's somebody that relies on his scoring, so keep that in mind. I wouldn't trust him in cash. Otto Porter against Brooklyn, certainly in play. Jay Crowder against Phoenix, definitely in play. I think Crowder had a pretty big game one of these days. Okay, he had a couple. He had against Brooklyn last time, 45.5 DraftKings points. Now Brooklyn kept that game close, so that's a different scenario. Against Phoenix, I don't necessarily expect them to keep it so close. Phoenix has got to be warned. I know I've been saying that, but he's got to match up with Phoenix, and they got to be warned. But Crowder can certainly have a big game. He seems to like bullying up on these bad defensive teams, so certainly worth consideration. Tobias Harris, certainly worth consideration. He's been playing minutes. GPPs only because his consistency hasn't really been there. I think you consider a guy like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I think they will need him on the court. I don't picture them putting Bellinelli in too much when LeBron's in the game, so I think that MKG could see an uptick of minutes just because of the fact that he's facing LeBron, and he's only 4,600, so that's definitely worth considering for sure. Taurean Prince, 4,500. His minutes are up there, but his upside hasn't. In a tournament situation, I can definitely see it. He's been getting more run. They've been trying to see what he's got. And he's been taking a decent amount of shots per game. We're talking 10, 9, 13, and 8 in his last 4 games. The only problem is he's been shooting kind of poorly, right? Like 2 for 9, 4 for 13, 3 for 8. But against Memphis, he shot 6 for 10, which is 60%. He got 32.5 DraftKings points. So at 4,500, you would take that. So I think he should definitely be considered as a value play for GPPs. With Millsap out, they have been using him. He has been seeing some minutes. Let's see who else we got here. I think that's about it. Oh, we got Zipster here, 3,800. His price has come up, but he is still playing mega minutes. And lately, he's looked pretty good against Philly. And maybe it could be interesting, but he's not 31 or 3K anymore. He's 38. I still think he's okay as long as you think he's going to play those 26 to 32 or whatever minutes. But obviously it's a big slate, and you're going to want to pay attention to see if any other news opens up, because there could be some stuff could be some better plays opening up better than him. But for now, 3,800, if you're looking for value, he's certainly a guy worth considering. Boogie Cousins is 10K. He had the big game. Him and Anthony Davis seem to rotate. One of these guys has a big game, they keep rotating. But 78.25 DraftKings points against Memphis. And 3 games against Houston, he's averaging 52.4 DraftKings points. Keep in mind that some of those games he's been hit or miss against Houston. He's had some good games, some bad games. And then Anthony Davis against Memphis, he really struggled, 35.75 DraftKings points. So they kind of flipped, and so did their prices. But keep in mind, Anthony Davis is averaging 43.4 DraftKings points in his matchup with Houston. It's tough when they both play together. Obviously, sometimes it's tough to gauge which one of these guys is going to do good, but they're both definitely viable GPP plays. It's hard to choose one of them in cash just because either one of them can go off. But in GPPs, if you pick the right one, you can definitely have a good day. Kevin Love, 7,500 against Charlotte. The problem is he still appears to be on somewhat of a minutes limit, so his upside is certainly limited. Saric, love Saric, 7,300 against Chicago. Love him. His minutes have been down recently, 2 games in a row, 26 minutes. I don't know if that's a fad. I don't know why they're doing that. But I'm hoping that it's not anything too legit. Okay, against Orlando, he had foul trouble. And then I think against Oklahoma City, it was a blowout. So he should go back if this game stays close, which I would imagine it could. Chicago isn't all that great of a team. I would imagine Philly can keep this close. I love Sarge at 7,300. I really do. I like him a lot. Let's see. Marvin Williams against Cleveland, you can consider, although he might be coming back down to earth a little bit, but you still got to consider him. If Warren is out, you have to go back to Marquise Chris. He played a bunch of minutes, 2 games in a row. And without Warren, we know that he's seen a little tick in usage. Markieff Morris is cheap. He's 5,800 against Brooklyn. You know the drill. I've already mentioned that several times. Ilyasova is interesting. He's 5,700 against Milwaukee. It's a decent matchup. My concern is that even with Millsap out, he's still not seeing mega minutes. 28 and 26 in his last 2. So that's not exactly like elite upside type minutes. But and his price is creeping up. So he's not even really necessarily a must play anymore. You got Kaminsky at 57. He's interesting. Mirotic is interesting. I'm not too big. 5,400 is too much for me to pay up for Mirotic unless I knew he was playing a ridiculous amount of minutes. It's just too much for me. Kenneth Faried, he had quite the game the other day. Put up 33.75 DraftKings points in 19 minutes. He's got a matchup with Indiana. He could do the same. It's too hard to figure out when he's going to play and how much he's going to play, right? Like it's just become it's just become a ridiculous task at this point. A little strange that I don't know why Mason Plumlee, they still have at center. I wish they'd move him to power forward. He's only 5,700, and I would definitely consider him in this matchup. But he's center, so that he's gonna make you think a little bit. That Young, 4,800, still remains very cheap. He did okay against Boston, but they didn't play him in the final minutes. I don't know why. Like at one point he did well, got a couple steals, a couple blocks, and they just didn't play him. He hit value. He got 22 DraftKings points. He was only 4,600, but not really sure what's going on or why they didn't play him there. Moving on to center. We talked about Jokic is 9,400. He's under 10K. Only played 29 minutes against Cleveland, but they really didn't need him. The whole offense looked good. This could be a situation where they may need Jokic a little bit more, just because Indiana, while they're not the best defensive team, they are better than Cleveland and Houston both, which is the last 3 games. They played 2 games against Houston and 1 against Cleveland. A couple bad, 2 bad defensive teams. Indiana's a little bit better of a defensive team, and I think they might need Jokic's scoring ability a little more, as well as his assists a little bit more. So I do like Jokic under 10K, even though he's been burning everybody, not really flashing the ceiling that we're all looking for. We know what he's capable of, and at 9,400, I think it's a great deal for him. In a matchup against Indiana, which should be pretty close. I don't think Miles Turner's going to have such a fun time covering him. Vooch is 7,800. Great matchup against Drummond. Always a great GPP play. That's 3 games in a row with 48.75 DraftKings points or higher, coming off a 50-burger against Charlotte. Vooch is always in play, especially against Drummond. Likewise, Drummond's in a phenomenal spot. Vooch is a terrible defender. Orlando's been a great team to target centers against all season. You gotta love Drummond at 7,600, even cheaper than Vooch. I probably like Drummond a little bit more just because he is cheaper, even though it's only $200. Dwight Howard, you got to love him against Milwaukee. He's been seeing an uptick in usage, and the rebounds have been all his without Millsap. Milwaukee has struggled against centers pretty much all year, so I definitely like Howard. Brolo you can consider. I wouldn't be surprised to see Brolo rest, to be honest with you, just because it's a back end of a back-to-back. Would not be surprised to see him rest. Al Horford against Phoenix, certainly in play. Let's see who else. We talked about Ersan. Mason Plumlee's 5,700. To be honest, I like Robin Lopez, and I like Jahlil Okafor and Robin Lopez. Jahlil Okafor, his minutes have been down. I guess they're cautious with his knee. He only played 17 minutes against Oklahoma City. But at 4,800, if you think he's going to get more run, he's interesting. Of course, I skipped over Rashawn Holmes. You could certainly look at Rashawn Holmes at 5,600, although against Oklahoma City, he only played 16 minutes as well. We saw against Orlando, he played 42 and got 53 DraftKings points. So we know Rashawn Holmes does have the upside. I definitely like Robin Lopez above those 2 guys, though. Clint Capella at 5,300, certainly in play. Against Denver, 33.25 DraftKings points. Against New Orleans, he only got 16.5, but he only played 16 minutes. In 3 games against New Orleans, he's averaging 23.8. I would assume they might need him on the court, but it didn't work out so well for him last time, so we don't know for sure. But yeah, I definitely like Robin Lopez is 4,200. Love the spot for him. He's coming back from suspension, so he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. We've seen him, for instance, against Washington, 45.5 DraftKings points against Gortat and Mahimi. Now he's got a matchup against Philly. If you're looking for a value punt center, I don't see why you wouldn't want to go with Rolo against that horrible Philly defense against centers. Marcin Gortat, 4,300. His minutes have come down a little bit, and his upside has kind of been limited. He's been kind of losing time to Mahimi. Mahinmi is 3,300. He's been seeing, 20, 21. He played 17 against Boston, but then again 20 against Atlanta. We like to target these guys against Brooklyn, so they're definitely in play. But my favorite cheap center has got to be Rolo, assuming he's going to play his normal allotment of minutes. So yeah, that's going to do it for us for the week, for today and for the week. I hope you guys have a great weekend. It's a big slate. Should be a very fun tournament slate. With your cash games, you got to be smart. Play the safe guys. Don't ignore the late value. Play the late value. I keep saying it. We got enough injury news to last us. It should keep us busy up until lock. So do your research when you can during the day, and pay attention to the Twitter to the old Twitter machine pre-lock. You're going to be tuned in and locked in. Anyway, guys, if you're not a member of WiseTake.com, please sign up. Membership is free. You get access to our free projection tools as well as our forums. We're going to open up a chat. We're trying to get some things going. You saw Fuego Steve with the WiseTake hats. We got a bunch of those. We're going to be doing some promotions to give those out, so keep be on the lookout. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button. It means a lot to us. It really goes a long way with us. And also subscribe to the channel. We're growing. We really appreciate it, but we're not where we want to be yet. We want to keep going, right? If you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow. If you're listening on iTunes, please subscribe to the channel and leave us some reviews. Rate us. Bump us up those charts. We need some ratings. We don't have any ratings, and I know there's a bunch of you that do listen to the audio-only version. So please do us a favor. If you could take the time out and write a review. And I want feedback anyway. I want honest feedback from you guys. What can I do to make this show better for you? Anyway, guys, it's been great. It's been tough this week. I've been sick all week, and you guys were cool about it. And you know, I'm sorry about all the coughing and the sneezing and the congestion and all that. I'm just trying to get by and trying to give you guys the best I got to give. And hopefully by next week when you guys see me, I'll be all better. But enjoy your weekend. Make sure you spend it with your loved ones, spend it with your friends, your family, whoever makes you happy. You know, you got to enjoy yourself. You need balance in life. Anyway, guys, we'll see you on Monday. Fuego Steve, one more time. Good luck, man. And please, everybody, hit Fuego Steve up on Twitter at Fuego_Steve. Show him some love and let him know that we're all rooting for him this Sunday at the FanDuel Live Final in Miami. As always, guys, have a great weekend and good luck.